Hello and thank you for coming to check this out. This is our 16th After Effects reproduction in Motion 5. The source graphic again comes from motion designer Aliyah Mikayilov. There's a link in the description to go and check out the graphic at the source. You'll see it roll in right at the very beginning. The project itself is 1920 by 1080 and it's at 30 frames a second, and the project duration is 8 seconds and 10 frames. I quite like this one. We've got these three sweeping banners that will come in, kind of surge in, and then the titles are revealed in two sections. This cutout section here, and then the full mast reveal. And there's just this clone animating everything out. In the layers panel, you see there's quite a few steps. It looks really busy, but actually we can make really short work of it using duplicate objects. So before we get into the project, a couple of things to help you out. If you want to use the same background, here are the RGB settings for the gradient generator. And we want to set up some guides. So you can lay out your guides like this. If you're not sure about how to set guides up, then they come from the rulers. You can just drag them down and out, and to get access to your rulers, just make sure that rulers is checked from the view menu and that guides is checked on. Once your guides are out, there's this hotkey here that you can use to toggle them on and off. Okay, so once you're set up, let's get into the project. To get started, we'll make a new group and call it banners. And then I'll grab the line tool, and we're going to hold shift and drag from right to left to add a straight line into the group, and I'll rename it as banner 1. Then I'll come into properties, into geometry. This X point we want at 485 and the second X point at minus 485. Then come into style. Set the end caps to start cap and end cap to none, and set the width to 180. Then come into properties, set the X position to 80, the Y position to 0, and we want to add 9% to the X axis shear. Right, I'll just toggle the guides on and select the line, and I'll pull each side in to fit within the guides here and here. Right, and turn the guides off. Right, now we can animate this line to stretch in. So with the playhead at the start, come into shape, set a keyframe on the last point offset and drag its value down to 0. Then come to 2 seconds and 5 frames. Bring the value back up to 100%. If your curve comes out flat, just click this tool here and then that'll stretch out the timeline, and we'll just drag the timeline back in. Right, I'll select the curve, set the interpolation to Bezier, and break the tangents on with the handles. Then I'll bring the playhead to 1 second, and I'm going to drag each handle toward the playhead and past it on each side, so that we start to build up this steep section here at the 30th frame. So I'll bring my playhead to about 3 seconds here, 3 seconds 20 actually, and I'll use Option Command O to bring the play range out point here. Let's see how that looks. Right, that'll do. We've got a nice slow stretch and then a leap forward. My frame rate's dropping a lot because I'm screen recording here. Okay, so bring the playhead to 5th frame and select this curve. Copy it, then come into the inspector, select the first point offset, right click and choose Show in Keyframe Editor. Select it and set a keyframe there, and then Command V to paste the curve in. Right, and bring the menu back to animated. There's better ways to do that, but this is just a very rough way to get it done. So we've got the two curves here, and the first point offset will finish its run at 2 seconds and 10 frames. Okay, now bring the playhead to 8 frames. Make sure that the first banner is selected. Let's Command D to duplicate it, rename it as banner 2, and the playhead's at the 8th frame. We're going to use Shift left bracket to shift the in point to the 8th frame. So now the second banner will follow in right behind the first. And we're going to do that again. Bring the playhead to 16 frames. Duplicate the second banner. Name it as banner 3. Then bring the playhead forward to 2 seconds and the 16th frame. Sorry. And with banner 3 selected, shift left bracket to shift the endpoint forward. So now we have the 3 banners coming in. But we want this third banner to bookend instead. We want it to leave an edge. So come to 2 seconds 26 frames where it finishes its run. In the inspector, change it from 100% in the first point offset to, say, 97. Or if you want it thinner, 99 or 98. Let's go for 97. Alright, so all our banners are done, and now we can get busy with the titles. Let's add a new group for the main titles. And I'll grab the text tool and click in to add the top title. In the inspector, I'll set the font size to 80 and center the alignment. So the font that I'm using here is Unisans. If you don't have it in your font book, there is a link in the description. You can go to a website and download a free version of Unisans Regular and Italic and Unisans Heavy Italic. Actually, I think you can get Regular, Regular Italic, Heavy and Heavy Italic. Okay, I'll click into the canvas here and select the first word and set that to Heavy Italic. Then I'll bring the playhead to 3 seconds 20 frames. Come into the inspector, set the X position to 22 and the Y position to 0. So 3 seconds 20 frames, that's where the main title will finish animating in, so we want to set a keyframe there. And the next step we'll need guides for, so I set up a guide before running down the middle at 0, so if you want to set one up, go ahead, just pull it in from the side. So let's select banner 3. So I have curves here from keyframing the banner, and you have curves, but the chances are that the curve you have is a little bit different to mine, and a small difference down here can make a big difference up here. So we'll follow the next steps carefully to make sure that you end up with a good result. What we want to happen is we're looking for the frame. So here is banner 3, and this edge here is the first point offset of banner 3. So in the inspector, this parameter here is represented here. So I'm looking for the frame just before this edge either passes 0 or is sitting right on 0. So at 1, 2, 3 it's sitting right on 0. At 1, 2, 4 it's past 0. So I want the one before, which gives me some room on this side of 0. That's the frame you're looking for. So for me it's 1 second 22 frames. For you it might be a couple of frames either way or the same. So whatever it is for you, at that frame, grab the main title and drag it back to sit behind the oncoming edge. In the inspector, break the tangent on the handle and set the curve to look like this. So the main title is going to rush in and then ease into its final place. And then whatever that frame was, so for me it's 122, I'm going to hit I on my keyboard to trim it out there. Alright, now I'll just turn the guides off. Again, let's do the lower title. Select the main title and duplicate it, drop it to the bottom of the group, drop the font size to 40. I'll come down here in the inspector and change the wording. And I'll move the playhead to 3 seconds, 25 frames. I'll just turn the guides back on, and in the inspector I'm going to drop the Y position to sit on this guide here, and I'm going to reset the X position keyframing too, and just at 3 seconds 25 frames pull it back so that it lines up with the top title there. Right, I'll click into the title and set that last word to regular caps, and then just make sure I've got all of the titles selected and set tracking to 10. Right, now I'll just line it up again. Okay, so we want to set a keyframe on the X position at 3 seconds 25 frames. And then I'm going to bring the playhead back to 1 second 25. I'll trim it out there, and wherever the first point offset is, I'm going to pull back that lower title so that it sits right behind it. Grab the curve, break the tangent, and give it that shape so that it rushes in and eases into position. Okay, I'll just turn the guides off. So that's the titles and banners done. Now we can get busy with the masking. So we'll select banner 3, we'll duplicate it. I'm going to call it banner 3 LPO. So I'll come down here and select the first point offset and reset it. Okay, then we want to bring the playhead back to the start with banner 3 LPO selected and hit I on the keyboard so that the endpoint is at the start there. So now we have a shape that we can use to mask out and reveal in the main titles as they come in. So let's select the main titles group, right click, add image mask, drag in banner 3 LPO as the source, and set that to subtract. So we have the titles revealing in from behind this edge here, but we can still see them when they hit their endpoints here. So come to wherever the endpoint is for your first title, select the main titles group, come and select the Bezier mask tool, and let's just click in to draw out a mask to hide whatever is on this side. Set that mask to subtract. Let's see how that's looking. Okay, so now we want to add the second masking feature to this shape here. So select banner 2. Actually, first of all, we want to create copies of these titles. So we'll add a group for those. Add a new group. We'll call that group offset. Select the main title and option drag a copy into the offset group. I'll just label it as offset, and I'm going to bring the playhead to 1 second and 4 frames and shift left bracket to move the endpoint there. Then I will grab the lower title, option drag in a copy to the offset group. I'll just rename it, and I'll bring the playhead to 1 second and 6 frames and shift left bracket to move it there. Okay, so now we can select banner 2, right click, add an image mask, drag in the offset group as the source, and set that mask to subtract. Okay, so the main titles and all the masking is done. Now we can add the flourishes. Select the first banner. Actually, first of all, let's make a new group. Select the first banner, duplicate it, drag the copy up into the new flourishes group there, and we'll name this one as top. Bring the playhead to 1 second and use the shift left bracket keys to move the endpoint to there. Come into the inspector and into shape, and we'll drop the width to 6. I'll just turn the guides back on. Right, so with the playhead at 1 second here, we want the Y position for this to be 80, and the X position, I'm just going to drag it until it hits the guide at the back there. So there's our top flourish running in. Okay, now we're going to duplicate that. I'll name it as lower and move it to the bottom of the group. In properties, I'm going to set the Y position to -80. And can you see this guide here? Oh, now we want to actually bring the playhead to 1 second and 5 frames. Use shift left bracket to shift the endpoint to 1 second 5 frames. Okay, and now we want to bring the X axis so that it starts right here on this guide. Okay, cool, we've got our 2 flourishes going, but stay with the lower flourish there. Come to the end of its run at 3 seconds 15. We don't want it erasing itself out like the top one does. We want it to stay and underscore the lower title. So come into the shape, into first point offset and change from 100% to 70%. Okay, so the main animation in is finished, and now we can animate everything out. Let's close up all of the groups, and I'll add a new group. Let's just call this group in, and I'll add all the other groups except for the background to that new group. I'll bring the playhead to 4 seconds and 5 frames, and with the new group selected, I'm going to just tap O on the keyboard until every item is trimmed out to the playhead there. Okay, I'll reset my play range. Just using some hotkeys to do that, and we'll grab this group, the in group, and right click, make a clone layer, and I'll bring the playhead to 4 seconds and 5 frames and use shift left bracket to shift the clone layers in point to where the animate in group finishes. And in the inspector with clone layer selected in the timing panel, if you don't see it open, just click here show. We'll set that to reverse. If you've done a few of the reproductions with us so far, then this will be a really familiar step. And that will animate everything out for us. And so we're finished with the 16th After Effects reproduction. So thanks for sticking it out to the end if you're still watching. I hope this was useful, and I hope it helps you out with your future project title ideas.